Start. Please put your cell phones on mute so that there's no interference. Recording there.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good. Boker Tov, everyone. This week's Parsha Shiur, we take leave of our father Avraham and of our mother Sarah. The Ravona Shalom shows Avraham, as the Torah describes it, Yadati, I know Avraham, Asher Yitzaveh, as Bonov, as Beiso Acharov, he will command his children, his descendants, to observe the ways of God and to be a chosen people. In that verse lies the essence of the difference between Avraham Avinu and between other people of his time and of later times as well. And the essence of the difference is in the word Yitzaveh, that he will command. Now, in different stages of life, if we are commanded to do something, that takes on a different coloration than if we do something out of our own goodwill or out of our own intellect or out of our own intent. So now, since we're engaged, unfortunately, in a military war, so everybody understands that in the military, you have to follow commands, and that there's little room for latitude for individual soldiers to devise their own strategy or tactics. That's your order. This is what you have to do. You really don't have that freedom of choice. Now, Avraham Avinu and Sarah are the pillars of chesed, of goodness, hospitality, care for others, a worldview that sees beyond themselves. They have a moral code to follow. That's what it means when the Torah, when the Chazal said that Avraham Avinu fulfilled the whole Torah before it was given. He had the moral code that the Torah represented. He followed it before it was formally written down and given. So here we have a basic idea that Rav Dessler, Rav Tzadok, and other great thinkers of our time point out to us, which is so germane to the world that we live in. How do we look at Avraham Avinu? And one way to look at him is he's a nice guy. He's a good guy. He's hospitable, charitable. But apparently there are other people in his time that are also hospitable and charitable. His three friends, Oner, Eshkol, and Mamre. There are Shem ben Noach, who's Melchizedek, the king in Yerushalayim, the Kohen. There are other good people in the world too. He's not the only good person. And in fact, we see that Avraham Avinu himself recognizes that, because he says that heaven, maybe there are 10 good people in Zone. Now, if there would not be other good people in the world that Avraham somehow was acquainted with, he never would have raised that. He would have known that there are no good people. So the answer is that there were good people. And that they could be a minority, but being hospitable seems to be not enough reason why Avraham Avinu should be the founder of the Jewish people. There are people who like company, who like to have guests, for whatever reasons. And it is accepted in society. The head of a different country comes, you make a state dinner for him. You're hospitable. So what is it that makes Avraham Avinu and Sarah Imeinu so special? So there's a posuk, Chesed le'umim chatas. The goodness of the nations of the world, it really is based upon sin. In other words, the good behavior that you see from others, where does it emanate from? What is its driving motive? What is its force? So we have a concept that we always say, Derech Eretz Kodma LaTorah. Derech Eretz really means the culture of the society to behave well. Precedes Torah. So if somebody sees it in history, that until Avraham Avinu, there was a period called Derech Eretz. In this period of Derech Eretz, civilization started to expand, and society began to be recognized as how it works. So therefore, the Torah told us the story of the Mabul. So there's no society at all. After Noah starts Derech Eretz again. So how does Derech Eretz start? Vineyards, manufacture of wine, which is starting on the left instead of the right foot. There's a problem immediately. then derech eretz develops. There's technology, there's building cities, there's creating a tower. So that is all part of the culture of derech eretz. But all of it, kodma LaTorah, came before the idea of Torah. Because the idea of Torah is that Avraham Avinu is a good person, not because of his nature. That's why we see in the Torah and the Tanakh that the faults of great and pious people are enumerated. Not nice. Why should we do that? Why does the Torah have to tell us that Avraham Avinu went to war? Why does the Torah have to tell us that he doubted that he would get Eretz Yisrael? And why do we need the details in this week's Parsha, how he purchased a grave lot for Sarah? Because the Torah wants to show us the human side of Avraham, and the human side of everyone has defects, has problems, is imperfect. So therefore, throughout Tanakh, all of the heroes of Tanakh, if you look at Medrash and the Talmud, he did this and he did that. And that's all to emphasize that their greatness and their goodness is not necessarily a reflection of their personality, of their choice, but rather it is a reflection of the fact that in Judaism, all goodness is because it's a mitzvah, because it's a commandment. I give charity not because I'm good-hearted. There are people that don't care about money. They blow money. So, I see a poor man on the street here, here's 10 shekel. Why not? That's not tzedakah. Tzedakah is, I was commanded to help the poor. I'm doing it under the discipline of the army that I'm in. And that's why we make a brocha on everything. We were commanded to do this and to do that. Because then that's our loyalty to the commander, so to speak. So Avraham Avinu, the Torah says, Ki yadati, I know him, asher yitzaveh. His goodness, his hospitality does not stem from his choice of character or behavior. It stems from the fact that he is my servant. And he does what I have commanded him to do. Commanding him to do is to emulate the Creator on human scale. Just as the Lord is good, the Lord is charitable, the Lord visits the sick, the Lord buries the dead, so do we. Because it's a mitzvah. Not because of the fact that it's the culture or it's intellectually satisfying or I figured it out myself. Because we see throughout human history from the time of the flood till today, that any reliance on human culture, on human society to do good is always very questionable, because there are no standards. So you can have the worst of atrocities, and the society thinks it's good, not troubled by it, because the culture says that that's okay. The culture says that there are only two kinds of people in the world: the oppressed and the oppressors. And if you belong to the oppressors, then anything that happens to you, you deserve it. And you decide who's the oppressed and who's the oppressors, which is exactly what is going on today. Perfectly acceptable to commit the worst of horrors because you're doing it to the class of the oppressors. And society has decided, for political or other reasons, how to define who is the oppressor and who is being oppressed. Avraham Avinu and Sarah raise a standard in the world that doesn't divide anybody in society. In their world, there are no oppressors or oppressed. In their world, however, there is good and evil. And from the example of Sodom, they learned that evil sometimes has no solution except to be destroyed. That there are terms that evil is non-negotiable. So Avraham Avinu took goodness, hospitality, things that people do, and that he was not alone in the world in doing it, but he elevated these concepts from being derech eretz to the concept of Torah. So that, again, our moral code is not derech eretz. Our moral code is Torah. Even past Torah, there's a moral code called Ruach HaKodesh, which is a godly intuition. But that is already a reach. But Torah, everybody has. That's why in halacha, there's a discussion, for instance, why don't we make a bracha when we give tzedakah? You should say, Asher kitshona b'mitzvah sov v'tzivonu litei tzedakah. There's a whole discussion why. But the discussion itself teaches us that tzedakah is a mitzvah, like lulav or matzah. It's not a societal norm, because societal norms change. And that's why the Torah said about Avraham Avinu will set a standard of mitzvahs, of goodness, that later generations will also observe. His descendants will observe it. They won't say it's different times, different circumstances. The old man, he could afford it, but I can't. 100 reasons. I once went with the Parsha Shiur, and he asked the man for support for the yeshiva. And the man, he said, yeshivas are not my bag. I don't know if I should give. So the Parsha Shiur said to him, in fact, he said, I don't believe in giving charity. People should earn their way in life, not be dependent upon others. You hear it often on the street too, people go get a job. What do you come snore by me? Go get a job. So the Rav said to him, but your father was very charitable. So the man said to him, my father? Did you know my father? He came from a small town in Louisiana. There's 1.5 Jews. He said, how did you know my father? And how did you know that he was very charitable? So the Rav said, no, I knew your father. Avraham Avinu was your father. I knew him very well. And he was very charitable. So that's an idea to think of. That 3,000 years later, we're charitable because our Father commanded us to be charitable. And that's why he was Avraham Avinu. And that's what the Navi says. Habitu el Avraham avichem vel sora techolalchem. You should always look and see where you came from. Your father Avraham, your mother Sarah that raised you. Yechad Krosiv, they were unique people. They elevated their eretz to the level of Torah. They made out of it a discipline, a way of life. In, I think it was 1952, Israel, for the first time, inaugurated Israel bond collections throughout sales throughout the world. And I remember that Ben-Gurion himself came then to promote the sale of Israel bonds. And there was a banquet in Chicago at the Stevens Hotel, which today is the Conrad Hilton, if it still exists. And there was you had to buy like a bond to get in. And they made an appeal, and people stood in line because if you bought a bond, you could shake hands with Ben-Gurion. It was a photo op, but then nobody had cameras yet. So, but people lined up to, you could shake hands with Ben-Gurion. My Rebbe, Mendel Kaplan, of blessed memory, he was a very unusual person. He went to the Stevens Hotel to witness the affair. And we were shocked. He certainly didn't have the money to buy a bond. I don't know if he would have bought a bond. And he was not known to be a fan of Ben Gurion. So we asked him in Shiur the next day. We heard that he went. So we said, Rebbe, how come you went? What did you see there? He said, what I saw there? I saw the children of Avraham Avinu line up to give money. That made a big impression on us. Because whatever there is within us is because we're the children of Avraham Avinu. And the reason that it lasts so long and survives all of the tribulations and historical obstacles is because it's a tzivui. It's a mitzvah. It's not just do I feel good about it. There's a field of human endeavor called philanthropy. So there are people that are, they're so wealthy that they're professional philanthropists. But in the history of the world, most of them have been singularly unsuccessful in doing any good with their money. Because they do not have a sense of mitzvah. People create foundations to avoid taxes. People set up a whole apparatus so that they themselves won't be personally involved. There are all sorts of motives in the world. But the motive for chesed is that it's a mitzvah. And that's what we say in davening. Titin emes liYaakov chesed lAvraham. We ask that God give us the ability to do chesed because it's a mitzvah. God give us the opportunity to be truthful because it's a mitzvah, not because of any sort of ideal or ideas. And all the great ideas of civilization for the past thousands of years, we see how difficult it is to translate any of them into actuality in life. Look what's happened to the universities in the world. 180 degrees from what they're supposed to be. How did that happen? The answer is because it's not a mitzvah. Knowledge is not a mitzvah. Teaching is not a mitzvah. So then anything goes. Whatever now is fashionable, that's what it is. But to us, it's a mitzvah. Asher kitshonu b'mitzvoso v'tzivonu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Before you open the Chumash, the Gemara, you have to make a bracha and say we're commanded to learn. That's the difference. That's the dividing line. So it's not an intellectual pursuit, though it may be. It's not just that it may be enjoyable to learn, though it may be. It's because it's a mitzvah. And our job is to follow the commands of our Creator. Because by following them, we are fulfilling the fact that we are created in His image. So I think that's the great lesson of Avraham and Sarah, why they're the founders of our people, and why they have had an influence that has transcended time and circumstance. And they remain our father and mother even until today. So have a great Shabbos, everyone, and thank you for coming. We are going to have our lecture series on the Civil War and the moral lessons of the Civil War. It will begin a week from this Saturday night, 8 o'clock. You can make reservations with Miriam Kubek or with me, or you can come without reservations. You leave without money, but it'll be fine.
Good job.
Thank you, Rabbi. I want to share something with you. My grandmother